Welcome to today's CPD to Inspire session. This is accessibility, stop talking, start doing. I'm Azeem. I am the program manager at Tales to Inspire and the founder, as well as everything else, of Inclusion Flows, which is a strategic inclusion consultancy based in Newcastle. Hopefully this will be a bit of good news for you for today's session. There are no slides. I'm just going to be talking to you for a little bit about some boring but important legal stuff. Then we've got our first amazing speaker joining us, Isaac. After Isaac puts the world to rights, and you'll see exactly what I mean once we've heard from him, we'll have a little break, and then we will be seeing and hearing from the incredible Sandie Roberts. And then we'll wrap things up with some final reflections for the session. But first of all, I just want to hand over to Krish to tell us who or what is Tales to Inspire.
Thank you, Azeem. So, hi everyone, and everyone here, but everyone also on the recorded. So, I'm Krish Patel, and I'm the founder of Tales to Inspire. We're a social enterprise based in Bolton, in the northwest of England, but we do workshops all over the country. It's kind of something that was born out of a need to do good. All I wanted to do was help people. How could we do that? And the power of stories. We share stories every single week to show people that there's nothing that we can't break through, or to try and be as great as we can be whilst raising awareness about certain topics. That's developed into workshops, into schools, into corporate spaces, delivering specific EDI, consultancy, workshops, and all sorts of things to a team that we have here now, where we deliver sessions all over the country. We have also the Tales to Inspire book, which you'll see on the video here, and also we have our podcast, our blog, and so much more going on. All about storytelling and the power of a story, but there's so much more to it, and we get really, really deep on lots of great things. Our ambassadors deliver sessions. Azeem is one of our ambassadors, shared his story at the very beginning when we began back in 2019, and basically, actually 2020. And our ambassadors then deliver for real life stories for real life outcomes on a variety of topics. So on that note, I'm going to hand it back to our ambassador and our program lead, Azeem. Thank you so much, Azeem, and I'm absolutely buzzing for this.
Thank you very much, Krish. And if anyone wants to speak to Krish, just email hello@talestoinspire.com, and he's at the end of that line. So I'm going to get straight into it with, as I said, the boring stuff, because if you can't tell, I'm not a huge fan of what the law says around equality issues. But what does it say about reasonable adjustments? Well, says that if you are placed at a substantial disadvantage because of your disability compared with non-disabled people or people who don't share your disability, organizations have a duty to make reasonable adjustments. And adjustments can be to the built environment, to working patterns, to equipment. And substantial means more than minor or trivial. And what is reasonable depends on each situation, and the employer needs to carefully consider, this is in the law, if the adjustment will remove or reduce the disadvantage for the person with the disability, if it's practical to make, if it's affordable, or if it could harm the health and safety of others. That basically means nothing. And in truth, I mean, I do this for a living, so I shouldn't tell you this, but in truth, you can ignore it if you want, because when it comes to equality, most, if not all, legislation is like a chocolate teapot. It's useless as soon as you actually need it, and it's only useful for storing like tepid water that's just going to taste really weird if you drink it. Equality isn't actually designed to, or equality legislation isn't really designed for equality, because you have to prove it. There's no element of being proactive about things, and this is something that we'll hear from Sandie about, is you can have all the evidence in the world, but an employer or an organization just needs to say, that's not practical, can't afford that, and we have legalized discrimination on the basis of cost. So the law is what it is, but it's so easy to defend yourself if you don't want to make reasonable adjustments. And you can, on the other side, if you are to challenge it, it's a battle. It's a fight if somebody doesn't see what you think is reasonable, and what in most cases probably will be, if people just think things differently. But not many people have the knowledge or the energy or the time to actually pick up that fight. So the entire concept of reasonable adjustments is just a way of defining lawful exclusion. And it's a way that doesn't make us in the non-disabled community feel bad about it, because, oh, well, it's reasonable. But let's have a look at who's actually in that disabled community. It's in the UK, it's 9% of children, it's 21% of working age adults, and of those, 53.5% are in employment. It's 42% of people above the state pension age. It's 59% of the over 80s. And as a whole, it's 22% of the population. And it's like 14.5 million people who the law says we can exclude. And that's what the law does. And that isn't just a problem for the disabled community, because the disabled community is all of us. If you make things accessible for everyone, you make things accessible for everyone. Gender, sexuality, race, age, belief, whatever, because all of those characteristics are disabled issues too, because disabled people can have those characteristics. They have those, the additional challenges that come with being from a further minoritized or marginalized community. We all need to think differently. And I think the way to do that is to engage with the social model of disability. And I can talk about this for ages, but it's really simple to me anyway. It's the world that disables people. Attitudes, understanding, all of these things lead to decisions that are built on exclusion. And if you look at the world around us, when it comes to disability, there are a lot of conscious and unconscious choices going on. People parking on pavements, blocking drop curbs. I see that all the time, and I see that because I notice it. And it doesn't just impact wheelchair users. It's people with buggies who, they're most likely, even still in this day and age, to be women. And it's that lovely old man George on his mobility scooter. And we never see the problems that are created by that. And yet, of course, there's always the challenge that there's limited space for everyone. But if we just knew what we were potentially doing by leaving the car on the curb, we might think differently, and that starts to change how the world is viewed by other people. And one of the ways to do that is to just start listening more to the voices of people with disabilities, which we will be doing shortly. So, does that make sense to everyone? Does anyone have any questions on that? I'm just going to give people an opportunity to jump in and share their thoughts on the social model of disability, or if you've got a different opinion.
Hi, Azeem. Just very quickly with your opening comments there. The thing that struck me was I never even thought about that. And I'm thinking that how many other things have I not considered, or how many things that have I not noticed or picked up upon because they don't apply to me?
Exactly. Sorry. I'll let you finish off there, Les.
No, that was it. That was my last bit.
We get a lot of that from in the footage that we've got from Sandie, which really talks about that in ways that you've described perfectly there. We don't see it, and it's not human nature to view not obstacles as an obstacle. If something isn't a problem for you, you don't think about it. The brain isn't designed to do that. It's a completely counterintuitive thing. So you have to consciously do it. But there's so many subtle little changes that we can all make, just in the way that we think, and the things that we notice and that we see around us. So yeah, so thank you for sharing that, because we're all guilty of that in everything that we do, because we've only got our own frame of reference, and it's not something that we should be scared of acknowledging. What we should be scared of is acknowledging it and then not changing our behavior because of it. And we'll not get it perfect all the time. Nobody can, nobody will. We just need to be slightly more aware of kind of the impacts of simple, thoughtless decisions that aren't selfish in intent, but can be quite selfish in outcome. And one of the other things with disability in particular is the kind of direct correlation. I know there's a few people on this call who work in and around health and social care, is that certain, disabled people, as I said before, they have other characteristics, but the inequalities are heightened within the disabled community because of, as I said before, because of acceptable exclusion. It's not on the footage that we'll see from Sandie, but we had a discussion the other week about, is disability the sort of last acceptable form of segregation? And it's an interesting way to think of things, because realistically it is. I don't like thinking like that, because it sets off different hierarchies between different characteristics. But I think it's a really, really important point to consider, that so many of us, like Les was saying, we don't think because they're not challenges to us, and because of that, we don't see that these things can, if they're not affecting our lives now, they probably will at some point, whether that's ourselves or whether that's our loved ones. We're likely to have these battles at some point, and I've had a few from my experiences working in the property world, dealing with landlords, dealing with leaseholders in blocks of flats who, honestly, the attitudes that I would sometimes experience from people just being determined not to allow there to be a stair lift in a communal area, and that just like, it's not costing you anything. It could be useful for anyone at any time, and they would just bring up countless arguments. Be like, oh, it's a fire safety risk. It's like, well, it's not. We can manage those risks. We can manage everything around it. You just don't want it because you think that is making this building look like a nursing home, whereas in reality, it's just a mobility aid. I'm very consciously making a decision to wear my glasses on this call today, because my glasses are a mobility aid. And we just have to think about things like that. I literally wouldn't be able to drive a car if I didn't have my glasses. We just, there are so many things that we don't consider as barriers because we've got the standard enablers. So we have to kind of look beyond just what we think we are and what we think we're doing, but that you can only know what you know. So coming to events like this, and particularly being able to hear from the voices of experience, is a massive way to kind of change things. And we need to think beyond sort of this idea of humanizing, humanizing disability, because it's so much more than that. We need to move away from being tolerant of disability, being tolerant of difference. We need to truly embrace those changes, because once we do that, and once we start doing that, and there are things that we can do on an individual level. I don't expect everyone to jump off this call and go out and try and change the world. It's about identifying the things that you can do in your daily life. That actually, once you kind of get past that discomfort that perhaps Les was discussing there, it's difficult when you see something, or something's put in front of you that is like, why haven't I thought of this? I never saw it that way. But you can treat that as something to be scared of, or you can embrace that as a learning opportunity, something to grow, something to change things from. So that's very much where we need to be. And I can't emphasize the point enough that just being compliant with what the legislation says, or what your interpretation of the legislation is, because the legislation is ultimately you can read it two ways. It's either so vague or it's so clear, and because of that, it's difficult, and you always have to try and prove that the decision maker is wrong, and that's always going to be a challenge for people. So the more barriers that we can remove, the better. And really, I think about reasonable adjustments, and I can't tell you what you should or shouldn't be doing for your organization on a call like this. I can definitely, me and Krish, we can definitely help you identify what it is that you need to be looking at and to be considering. But when people, as organizations, when we offer reasonable adjustments, or we say, please let us know what adjustments could be made, I often think of that in a similar way as going into a restaurant and just being asked, what ingredient would you like in your food, without any real further information. It's a difficult thing if you're in that position of not knowing what is normal for that organization to do, or knowing what their policy ideas are, and all of those things. If you don't know what is the limit, are you going to ask in the first place? Are you going to, what are you going to do if something is complicated that gets asked for? It's so difficult. And yes, we can always sit here and be like, well, what could we possibly do? Ask. Go out and ask. Use people like Isaac, who's just joined the call. Use people like Sandie and say, well, what can we offer, or what might be needed? And then you can make a conscious and informed decision about what is reasonable or not for the organization.
Azeem, we've received a message. I'm not sure if you've read it or you've seen it. Line in state for Lake Queen. This is from Colin. Line in state for Lake Queen. Separation by state in 2x queues using protected characteristics as a separator. Access barriers, e.g. steps in Westminster Hall. Live stream 24/7 to 7 million people over 48 hours. Rigor of mourner experience planning, NRAC, etc. versus rigor of order of service planning. So you put a question mark there. So,
Colin, do you want to comment on that? Do you want to expand on that point for us, please?
Hi, thanks again for the call. Hope everyone's well. Yeah, and hopefully it's not sort of out of context, etc. But obviously we've had a massive lying in state exercise, haven't we? Basically commissioned by the state. Various parts of it. Obviously, the people who look after Westminster Hall, Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sport, with all the people basically who came to see obviously the late Queen. So given that these conversations around accessibility, It was interesting to see your comments, I guess, around, or taking into consideration your comments around sort of conscious thinking and all that sort of stuff. We had the Steps of Westminster Hall live streamed to 7 million people over 48 hours, according to the BBC. Steps are an access barrier. So the whole thing around Section 149 Equality Act 2010, around driving out discrimination, driving out the means and the mechanisms for discrimination. Yes, there was potentially a step-free route available, but it was completely, the experience, the route is separate to other people, basically. So the whole separation, the two queues, the one closing for the other, the announcements on Twitter saying, oh, the queue has finished. Well, actually, there are two queues. Why are we actually dividing the queues? So the whole engine around how the mourner experience was sort of organised, what due diligence went into that? Did it go out to tender? So is that the specifications? Did the specifications go public? Yeah, so that's just a sort of comment. I just wondered what the people, sort of the panel's kind of view was around that whole very, very public exhibition of potentially complete division by separated characteristics, protected characteristics, sorry, against what you're just saying about conscious thinking, basically, around accessibility.
Excellent question. Wow, it's a big one.
Big one.
I think it's really good evidence of which I'm going to use this answer as a segue into introducing Isaac, who was joining the call. It's a really useful example of the lack of representation. You know, as you've said, there were alternatives available, there were accessible options available, but there was no focus on them. There was, you know, it didn't even, you know, it just wasn't really an issue for people, but it was available, and it's like, well, what was the, you know, what is the thinking behind them being completely separate and distinct and segregated processes? And as you said, that, you know, there could be reasons behind that, but we don't know them, and it all contributes to some of the things that certainly that Sandie talks about when we hear from her later in the call. So thank you very much for that question, Colin, and we might have time at the end to delve further into it. But so we've got Isaac on the call. I said earlier that one of the things that we really need to start doing more of is listening to and amplifying the voices of experience. Isaac is somebody who I could give him a million different titles, because he's got a million different titles. He might not have had this one, but I'm going to introduce him as Isaac Harvey, the king of LinkedIn. Welcome, Isaac. Thank you so much for joining us today. And for people who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you before, who is Isaac?
Yeah, that's a good question. But yeah, thanks for having me to talk today. So yes, I was born with a disability called limb pelvic hypoplasia, which means I have no arms and short legs. I have scoliosis, which is the curvature of my spine, which has been corrected by metal work. And I haven't let my disability stop me from doing things and making the most of life, basically. And as you've said, king of LinkedIn, by sharing my story and lived experience with people, both positively and negatively. And I've managed to grow a community of like-minded individuals, and being able to learn and also teach others in this journey.
I need to get used to rapid unmuting of myself. Thank you so much for that, Isaac. Gonna ease us into a nice little question. So from what I know of you, you are a complete adrenaline junkie, and you're constantly smashing through boundaries, whether that's you know, marathons on roller skates, whether that's skydiving. Have you always been interested in extreme sports?
That is a good question. I feel with my how growing up, I've always had a mind which hasn't really liked going down one certain path. I, to put it plainly, I get quite bored if doing the same things all of the time. So I'm always looking for new things to do and allowing myself to see what can be done. And as I say to people, if it can be done, then why not? Which has allowed me to do the skiing and skydiving, and as you mentioned, the roller skating. It's just stuff to keep me going, and in return, showing people what can be done, because those people don't know it is possible to do most of the things as a disability. So I'm able to share with others what can be possible in the world.
Thanks, Isaac. Yeah, I mean, you've touched on something there, showing other people what is possible. And we may or may not go into that in a little bit more detail. But how's it affected you? You know, not seeing people in the spaces that you have broken boundaries to get into, you know, growing up, and that can be related to disability. You know, even with things like you know, skiing, skateboarding in the UK to a large extent, that sort of X Games world is a very, or certainly was when I was growing up, was a very white dominated space as well. So what has been the impact, or has there been an impact of not seeing somebody like Isaac in those spaces?
So it's certainly been difficult not really seeing myself really portrayed in the media, and having role models in the space doing all of these different activities. And because of I didn't really know all of these things even existed, which is why I kind of so I'll go back. So growing up, my family's always see me as no different, and always encouraged me to be the best version of myself, and have always encouraged me to do things. And because of that kind of growing up and mental encouragement, it made me want to explore the different avenues. And I know we could talk about this later, but you know, my mental well-being and being more self-aware of my inner self, it's allowed opportunities to be attracted to me, and how one thing can usually lead to another. For example, for me to take part in toolship, I've taken part in an activity called toolship sailing, and that's a sailboat, like a pirate ship, which is all accessible for people with disabilities. And that happened because I emailed a boat company who were taking up people with disabilities, but then found out that they weren't allowed to take people with wheelchairs. So they gave me another contact to be able to do the sailing, as they were doing a trip around the UK with Barclays Bank and getting to teach Barclays Bank members about disabilities. And then that led on to them partnering up with the ski company, and then I got to go skiing. And one thing's led to another, and then through that, I've been able to create these videos because I'm also a video editor, and then basically become that person that I didn't see growing up, because a lot of people have been seeing me in that light of what is possible in the disability space. And even on Monday, I took part in the Disability Power 100. I was invited to celebrate with the winners, and a woman came up to me who uses crutches, and she said, "Oh, you know, through you, I would love to take part in the roller skating." So we've invited her to come along and take part when she's available. But yeah, I'm now being what I didn't see for people, which is kind of coming full circle, so I can help others now.
There's with that kind of, with the amount of energy that you're kind of putting in, how do you, I mean, and actually for the benefit of the people on the call, in case you can't tell, this isn't the first time that me and Isaac have spoken to each other. We have regular conversations, and every time we talk to each other, we talk to each other about our mental health and how we're doing, and we mean it when we talk to each other. So like we share a lot that we're probably not going to go into on this call, but what are some of the things, and because you're like me, I will tell Isaac to rest if I think he needs rest. He'll tell me to do the same, but we don't listen to each other because we're stubborn. Krish is exactly the same, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. But what do you do to force yourself to recover, or are you still trying to find that that balance?
I think I'm always gonna try and find that balance. But one thing I do, and it sounds a bit weird when I say this, but going out helps me rest. Because when I'm at home, I'm always on the computer working. So when I have the opportunity to go out, I try and stay out as long as possible. And then because I'm usually doing an activity which is fun or meeting with people, so I try and make that the longest. But then it's coming back to that bit of stress of knowing that, oh, because I've been out, I've got all of these emails to get back to, or I've got all of these messages. So it's got that a bit of a vicious cycle. But you'll be able to know, before this call, I actually took a moment to take a meditation actually. So I'd be relaxed and not working up until the call and then be flustered. I just forced myself to say, okay, I'm going to take a 20-minute meditation and then be ready for me to speak with you. So it's about forcing yourself. And I went also yesterday, I went to the UK Black Business Show in London. It was kind of like a spontaneous trip to have gone there. And there were speakers up on stage, entrepreneurs, all in different leader roles. And there was a woman from Tesco, and she was saying, you know, I don't have a work-life balance, but I have a work-life blend, and it's make sure that life suits around her. So she would work till like 7 till about 9, then do the school run, and then work still about 12 till 5 to then get the children back, and then 10 till 12. But you know, that works for her. And the importance of the 9 to 5 is not, you know, if the 9 to 5 doesn't suit you, then you should be able to go get around things to suit you. So having that blend of what's going to suit your work-life blend.
Thank you so much for that answer, Isaac. And as if this was pre-planned, but this definitely wasn't. Some of the things that Isaac was talking about there, meditation, the law of attraction, they are things that are actually going to be covered in our November session, which is going to be on the 17th of November, which Krish will be talking about goal setting in that, and we have another amazing guest, Medea Sosan, who will be telling us about all the ways that we can grow, most specifically in the workplace, but within that there's going to be a lot that people can take away for workplace development. So little advert there that I just thought I'd throw in. On this next question, I'm actually going to bring Krish in on this as well, because he will be able to relate to this a lot more than me, because I'm not somebody who is particularly adventurous. My idea of a holiday is all-inclusive and the beach. But how much work goes into planning all of your adventures, Isaac? And Krish, I'm going to bring you in because you will be able to have a conversation on this, because I know nothing about this type of world.
Oh, so Isaac, go for it first. Just a little quick one as well. As Les has got his hand up, but I'll just to let you know. I know that's me monitoring, but Isaac, you go for it first, mate. How much? Because it's going to be very different. How much? I'm not a planner, so Isaac, you go for it first.
Yeah, so you know, even we could take a step back. You know, every day going out is a plan. Planning how long it's going to take me to get somewhere, then using, you know, getting into London, I have to find out what transport links are the most accessible, what I'm going to be taking, if I'm going to be out for all day, if I need someone to come with me, and loads of different factors put into play when it comes to me being a wheelchair user and a disability. And that really, each plan is also very different. As I said, with going with people, how long I'm going to be out for. But for these bigger trips, it always relies on who's going to be available to come with me, how I'm going to get to the airport or train, if I'm going to stay the night before, if I'm going to be taking my computer, the medication. So it's a lot of things that have to be thought out for me to have a pretty reasonable trip, and most comfortable as well. But I'm also someone who can be quite spontaneous, and if I have forgotten something or if something doesn't go to plan, I can be quick thinking, and that's due to a lot of different travels that I've been to, like Berlin, London, almost every week. So it's a lot goes into it, and a lot happens behind the scenes that not many people see. So, you know, the skydive, for example, was a lot more than a person with disability jumping out of a plane. It was, you know, finding an airfield which would actually take me, because there was nowhere in the UK would take me because of health and safety. So I had to search online, and then I found a place in America, and from that I had to get a friend who was going to come out with me for 10 days, sort out with the emailing the American people. So yeah, a lot goes on behind the scenes on every travel, but I don't really find it something which is difficult because I'm so used to it now. But when I tell people, it's like, oh, that must be really difficult. But it's like, no, as long as I have it all done step by step, it's quite straightforward.
But on that one though, Isaac, is, for example, when we last saw each other in Manchester,
yeah,
I remember that specific day you were getting a train, which was a 5-minute train journey to where we were supposed to meet, that took you two hours.
Yes.
Like, you remember in the morning, and that was literally because of a lack of,
accessibility.
Lack of accessibility and communication to someone like yourself, that you are not able to go to that train station.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll leave that to, like, if you want to explain a little bit about that, because that's massive.
Yeah, so I'll tell you that story. So I went up to Manchester before I met you, Krish. I was going to a charity called the Together Trust, and it's a center for people with disabilities who learn, and they have this great activity place to do cooking, and they do classes and do life skills. And from Manchester, Piccadilly, there was a train which took 5 minutes to the place, and then it was like a 3-minute walk. So I booked the train, and I've never been to Manchester before, so I didn't really know much about the stations. But I got onto the train guard let me on, got to the station, which did take 5 minutes, and then got there, and the train guard was like, oh, there's no lift here. I don't think you can get out. And it's like, well, you do this probably every day. How did it, you know? So I ended up having to go 2 stations up to then go all the way back to go around the other side to get another train back, to then get a taxi to the place. And that overall took 2 hours, and it was literally ridiculous. just because of that one station and not someone really communicating with me properly, I mean, it took 5 minutes, took 2 hours, yeah, and it wasn't great. But definitely something I learned now that I need to double check with the Manchester staff if their stations are accessible.
But once again, within the workplace, Isaac, even if it is, it's for them to know and be able to communicate within that workspace. Because even if they don't know it's accessible or they do, they've got to be able to communicate that to you. And as a workspace, why is it always you trying to search? Like, why is it not? And we've talked about this numerous times on all of our ridiculous conversations we have, that why is it always you that have to put in so much hard work to find out whether a ramp has a gradient that you can get up? Like that, it should be accessible for you. And that's from the workspace's point of view, wherever that would be. So that's a little rant from my point of view. Even we've had this discussion, and you don't get. It frustrates me how frustrated you get now about it. But I mean, there's an example when you told me about the time you tried to get on the bus and all these different things where people. It's just so many times that you have it in your life, mate.
Because the reason I'm so calm, and actually a lot of people have been saying that to me recently, like you're very calm in these situations. But for me, it's like if I could get frustrated for everything in my life, and that would really change my mood completely. I think I would be more negative towards life. And yes, it is difficult, but it's overcoming those obstacles. And it's also an opportunity to teach people about accessibility. Yes, as you said, why should I be having to do it? But on the other hand, people just don't know. But once they do know, hopefully they will take that on board and then know that for future references and want to learn more when it comes to accessibility. So I feel in those circumstances, we both have the responsibility, willing to teach and willing to learn so that we can both work hand in hand to make it better for everybody.
Thank you, Isaac. I've got one last question for you. Conscious that we don't want to take up too much of your time. And again, thank you so much for being part of the Tales to Inspire community. We do what we can to help each other, and it's great. And this last question is a little bit left field, but I have prepped you for it. What are your thoughts around technological development in the fields of prosthetics and robotics? Let us know what you think.
Well, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. So again, last night going to the UK Black Business Show, it was all about technology and how technology is there to help people in need, and how far advanced that we have come. And I feel it was a very interesting conversation. Didn't talk about prosthetics or anything like that, but it was, how drones can search out people who may be in fiery buildings and being able to communicate better, and phones being able to detect a car crash and things like that. But when it comes to prosthetics, it has been something that a lot of people, well, there was one particular guy I knew from a very young age was like, oh, you can get robotic arms and, it could really help your life. And, for ages, I thought, well, why do I really need that? Because, I'm quite capable with my feet. I'm using the computer now with my feet, which is why I'm lying down. I'm able to drive my wheelchair using my feet. I used to do drawing and so many things I was able to do, well, I still can do with my feet. But as time's gone on, I could see an advantage of having robotic arms. For example, when going to a train station, I have to rely on someone to press the button for me to get into the lift. And without them, I'm not able to use a lift. Like, for example, I went to my local station, and the woman said, "Oh, I'll let you in," and then she said, "Oh, I don't need to press the button because it goes down automatically." So the lift went down automatically, but the doors didn't open because the button wasn't pressed. So I had to somehow use my shoulder to press the button to get out of the lift. And it's those circumstances which would make things a lot easier when it came to robotics. So I think it would cut out a lot of barriers. But I've kind of lived 27 years of my life without it, and I've managed for the most part. So it's got its advantages and disadvantages.
I like that. I like that way of thinking. You know, and also there's voice activation technology
Yes.
is so advanced now. But it is just, I think it's so enlightening to, we get this from the footage we see with Sandie after the break that we'll have in a couple of minutes, is the sense that, you know, let's just, you know, you weren't on at the start of the call, but it's not conditions that disable people, it's the environment, it's the world around. And you know, you are a shining example of that, and it's really important for us to, as much as we celebrate the, you know, the audacious things that you do, to shine a light on the kind of day-to-day day-to-day challenges that you know just make life unnecessarily difficult for you. That yes, you know, you're like, look, it's fine, and I've got my system, I know how to do all of this stuff, I just get it done. But the reality is the rest of us don't have to do that. And that's where we in the non-disabled community need to start taking the lead. You know, we need to let people like Isaac rest. And you know, you've told us what is needed. You know, you keep telling us what's needed. Sandie gives us more information about what else is needed. It's down to us to do what we can to make those changes, or to push those changes, to amplify and to raise those voices. So before I let you go, I'm going to let Les speak in a minute, because he's had a light bulb moment, and it's always good to share light bulb moments. But is there anything that you want to plug while you got the audience?
Well, I mean, to add on to what you were saying, that's becoming an allyship, working together. And you know, in life, not everyone's going to get it right, or know anything, or know everything, sorry, because I don't know everything about the disability community, but I'm also learning and becoming an ally for, you know, people with visual impairments, manual wheelchair users, which is totally different to me using electric wheelchair. Not all wheelchairs are the same. And it's just that opportunity to learn from each other and be an ally to each other, and knowing that you're not going to get it right first time. I don't get it right first time, but it's learning from what we didn't get right, and improving every single day, really. And yeah, just to end on, yeah, true allyship. And if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, it's Isaac Harvey, where I share pretty much on a daily basis behind the scenes stories and things that I get up to, and giving you the real talk, as people say. You know, I'm not doing it around the bush. I tell you how it is, both positive and constructive stories, just to have that true balance of life, because as you said, it's the reality and I want to portray it.
Amazing. Thank you again so much, Isaac. And I will share links to your social profiles after the call. As I say, I am going to let you go. you know, if people have got questions for Isaac, they can be filtered through me. You may have questions as well when we hear from Sandie, and I just want to give people who are going to catch up on the recording an opportunity to feedback on some questions as well. So if people do have questions, put them through me, and I will get you the answers. So we'll have a few minutes for wrap-up reflections at the end of this session anyway. But I'm going to bring Les in to tell us his light bulb moment.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I find it was great to hear that this was coordinated in partnership by Tales to Inspire, and I joined this as someone who I think I've got it pretty all right. I've got a pretty decent life. I've got PTSD, I've got IBS, and there's times when I think, oh, woe me, no one understands, I don't know what's going on. And then you listen to Isaac talk and the things he's overcome and the things he faces on a daily basis that I would never be exposed to in a million years. And I just want to say thank you very much to Isaac, first of all, for giving you a little bit of hope and knowing that actually for people in a different situation to you who can do such amazing things, that life for yourself has actually got that optimism at the end of it. So Isaac, I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time to speak, brother. I really appreciate it. And the light bulb moment I had, and I'm only sharing this because of the call and the context of the call, and the reason for that is out of pure embarrassment for at my own, whether it's ignorance or uneducatedness or lack of awareness. But when Isaac first logged on, I noticed and I thought, and again, you know, I looked and I thought, is his laptop in a different place? Is he lying down? Why is he lying down? And that was purely my ignorance. And because I had no idea of the concept or the situation or Isaac's condition. And then you hear him talk and you think, well, actually, Les, if you'd have gave yourself 2 seconds to get some context of what's going on, it actually opens the book to understand the story. And that was my light bulb moment, is that I walk around as a Caucasian male in my mid-30s, completely oblivious to everything outside of my blinkers, which is what you said earlier, Azeem. It's having the ability to either be scared of things we don't understand or hold our hand up and say, do you know what? This is a great learning opportunity. And the only reason I'm highlighting that is just to add a little bit of context to the call, because I was oblivious to the entire situation, and my I don't want to say prejudgment, but I've never seen that before, you know, totally fitted in the context of the call, and I think it's been really, really valuable that I've dialed in.
Thank you so much for sharing, Les. And I think that is kind of the perfect note for us to just take a couple of minutes to reflect, to get a glass of water or whatever. So let's come back at, we'll start again at 4 minutes past 3. So we've got 4 minutes. And thank you so much again, Isaac, from all of us. I'm sure everyone on the call has taken a huge amount from hearing from you today. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And thanks, Les, for that comment. I think it's something that a lot of people do not admit when it comes to unconscious biases. Because, you know, even I do that the same with other people. So it's just taking that moment to take a step back and reflect and learn from it. As I say, every day is a learning day, both positive and negative. So thank you.
Right, folks, let's come back at 4 or 5 minutes past 3, and we will run through the final part of today's session. Thank you all.
My name is Sandie Roberts. I am 51 and I became a full-time wheelchair user in 2019, although I've had health difficulties since I was 15. So I've struggled with my health on and off. And I now use all of my time to help support and educate people around me via sort of online social media, radio, TV, that kind of thing. So educate the non-disabled world about the disabled world and the chronically ill lives that we lead. And I do a little bit of modelling as well and work with brands to help amplify the voices of disabled people and hopefully help normalise seeing disabled people doing normal things in the world. I choose to use disabled people, so I'm happy to use that for myself. I don't get offended if somebody calls me a person with a disability. But I would never tell somebody else what they should be called. I know that there are some people who feel very strongly about it, and I feel strongly about it for myself, and I wouldn't want somebody to tell me what I should call myself. But I do very much believe in choice. We all should have a choice. But it's taken a long time for me to become comfortable with the term disabled, and I'm very proud of the fact that I belong to the disabled community and the richness that we bring to humanity. And so I'm quite happy to use that terminology. It is really important that we use language that we're comfortable with. And I would ask that people try and be aware of the words that we use and try and be respectful of the words that people would like you to use around them. So I would like it if somebody said to me, what would you like to, what would you like to use? And then use that around me. I would do that around somebody else, a bit like pronouns, but be respectful of somebody's pronouns. I used to use terms such as wheelchair bound and all kinds of other things, I would say, and still do to this day, and I will still continue to do until I learn differently. I choose not to use wheelchair bound because when you stop and think about it, which is what we don't do very much, but if you do stop and think about it, it has a very negative connotation, which is quite subliminal, and it kind of seeps into lots of different areas and the perception that we have of disabled people, and puts a negative connotation onto a wheelchair. And I actually really love my wheelchair. It's a thing of joy, it's a thing of freedom for me, and it hasn't always been that way. If you listen to the podcast, you'll find out why. Little teaser. But I am not stuck in my wheelchair. I choose to use my wheelchair because of the joy and the freedom it brings to me. I was force-fed, I'm going to say, by the society that we live in. I was force-fed this concept that a disabled person was a fate worse than death, was a very bad thing. You did not want to be a disabled person because it in and of itself was something that you did not want to be. It was a second-class human being, to the point that we are actively trying to genetically breed out of the human race disabled people. And every interaction I had with the medical profession was tinged with this fear of becoming disabled. You cannot do that, or you're going to become disabled. Even when I was pregnant, I was told, don't have children because you will run the risk of becoming a wheelchair user, or you'll end up, the words they would use, you'll end up in a wheelchair. Like this is like a prison sentence. And these things, they work on the way that you view a condition. It doesn't paint it in a rosy light, doesn't paint it in a positive light, it paints it in a very negative way. So I internalized all of that, you know, that became something that I saw as something that is a fate worse than death. Literally, I remember the doctor saying, you're going to end up in a wheelchair by the time you're 30, you're going to end up in a wheelchair by the time you're 40. And I said to those doctors, I will not do that. You watch me, because in my head that was failure. So when you see the only representation of disabled people on TV, in film, across every kind of media, as something to run from, or something to be fixed, or something to be to gasp in horror at, or to be pitied. You know, we see it on the fundraising thing, you know, on TV, everything that's to do with fundraising. It's, please give us your money so that we can save these poor people from this awful situation that they're in. Look how terrible it is. Even down to the Paralympics, you're shown how, in inverted commas, air quotes, how awful this situation is, and look how amazing they are overcoming their difficulties to become these athletes, rather than just what incredible athletes they are. Hang on a second. A, it's not that bad, and B, it's bad in ways that are not the ones that you said it was going to be. In fact, the ways that it's bad is all to do with the world around me and nothing to do with me. It's all to do with the way that the medical profession is treating me. It's all to do with the fact that you're not helping me. It's all to do with the fact I'm not getting the treatment I need. It's all to do with everybody else and not me, actually. And that was the wake-up call. And that was when I think I changed. But none of the reasons I was thinking the way I was my fault. I had nothing else to see. So it wasn't my fault. It's nobody's fault that they think that. They need to tune into another channel. They need to be shown an alternative reality.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny. I'm a wheelchair user and I'm paralysed from the waist down. I've recently been on holiday and this is how I get onto a plane, usually using an aisle chair. This is what they got me onto the plane with, but unfortunately on my flight they didn't have an aisle chair on board. So the flight with Albastar didn't get off to a great start. As you can see, they wouldn't let me sit anywhere near the front of the plane, even though there were spare seats. Then when I asked if I could go to the toilet, they said no, that they wouldn't help, and they just proceeded to keep serving the drinks, which is great. So this is when I actually got to the toilet itself. This is my partner helping lift me onto the toilet. Obviously, this is quite a small space, so it was a bit of a struggle. But when you've got to go, you've got to go. So this is what we had to do. One staff member quite rudely told me that disabled people should just wear nappies on board, which I find bizarre that people think that that is the solution to this scenario. They said there wasn't enough room for an aisle chair, even though they had room to have drinks trolleys, perfume trolleys and cigarette trolleys. Every other flight I've been on has had an aisle chair. There's a lot of improvements to be made when it comes to access within the travel industry, and I hope they're made soon.
Because this was her option, her partner decided that he was going to film this because he knew nobody would believe if they just said this had happened. So he filmed her going to the toilet in this manner and posted it online. And a lot of people in the comments have said that they don't believe that that's true, what's happened, that she's not disabled, that she didn't, that it's okay for her to have done that, that she's not disabled because she's wearing jeans, that she's not disabled because she got herself, you know, was sat on the toilet and then had her jeans on, so therefore she must have been able to stand up to take her jeans down. All kinds of people not believing, and we know they wouldn't have believed her if she just said it was true. And in the view of having physical evidence, they're not believing her. The fact that somebody was filming her, they're like, this must have been staged. People saying, I have hundreds of comments because I reposted this, and I have hundreds of comments that I have not that moderated, that I've not allowed, of people saying that it isn't true, saying this was staged because otherwise why else is he filming her? People cross because he's filming her and not helping her. But I find it, so this is where I have a problem. I have an issue. I don't have any issue, like I've said, if people don't know, that you don't know what you don't know, that's absolutely fine. I didn't know the stuff that I didn't know before I became disabled. That's absolutely fine. We all have to learn. I've got no problem with that at all. What I have a massive problem with is when somebody with a lived experience who is disabled is telling you that this is happening, and you as a non-disabled person act as some kind of higher judge, decide that you are going to rain down your judgment on that person and say, no, I am choosing to disbelieve you. I am saying that that is not true. I have such a problem with that. I have such a problem with that. What else could we do if video evidence is not enough? Those people that are saying she was sat on the toilet with her jeans on, what did they want? Did they want the person to have her pants and trousers pulled down for them to video that and see that? Would that be good enough? Would it be good enough for them to have carried this 6 foot something lady across the heads of all these other passengers? Would that have been good enough? I mean, what is actually good enough? What do people need? I want to say to somebody who, and I have, in the comments, that in the caption that I wrote, if you think it's okay to be told as a disabled person who doesn't need to wear a nappy or use a catheter that that is a solution, then it needs to be okay for you too. I don't need to use a catheter. You don't need to use a catheter. So then let's remove all toilets from aeroplanes. If it's not okay for you, it's not okay for me, because basically they're saying they are better. They are a better class of human being than I am. What you tell me, Janet, what am I supposed to do? It does make me want to grab those people and put them in a room and say, you solve this problem for me. You want to put that comment on there. I'm going to put the responsibility back on you. You solve it for me then. Come and live with me. Because the people have said these things to me. Come and live my life with me and see what difficulties I have, all these micro fractures throughout my day. Because people think it's so easy that you have a blue badge and you get this brilliant parking space. Come and live my life. I had a lot of people in these comments saying we can't cater for everybody in this world, and I'm so angry about the comments because they're speaking as if we're talking about a very specific, unique person's request. I don't know, somebody who wants to wear a size 10 shoe and a size 6 shoe in purple, green on Tuesdays and Thursdays on a plane on his own, or something really bizarre like that, instead of a quarter of the population that the majority of people are going to join at some point in their life, including that person is very likely to join the disabled community if they live long enough, or if they injure themselves. Do you know what I mean? And I can't find an answer that is socially appropriate for me to give, because I just want to scream at them when somebody says that. I haven't found a way to come back with a succinct enough, smart enough reply to that particular one. And a lot of people are saying it. Have you got an answer to that? And like you said, because they're somebody who just isn't very nice.
Yeah.
and we're not going to have a world full of nice people. And we have to, like you said, hope that there are going to be allies, and there'll be an ally in the world somewhere that that person can identify with. And it might somewhere down the line click and go, oh, okay, well, I actually do really like that person. I'll listen to that person. So that, well, I will listen in if they're saying it, you know. and I think that's going to be what it comes down to, is building the right communities of people that, and I think that's what's happening at the moment. That's where the shift is happening. These people who are growing in awareness, growing in a desire to change this selfish way of thinking, and gravitating towards each other and growing in power, and these noisy minority are becoming smaller and smaller, and they don't like that. They don't like that because they've been in power for so long, and it's happening, you know, with that curve that goes up a lot steeper. It's doing that. I think in the last 50 years, for sure, there's been a much steeper incline in the rate of awareness of what's going on, and of awareness within ourselves of how we understand what's going on, how we understand how we interact within the world that we live in, and the world that we around us, and how we touch it, and who we touch, and how we exist within that, and how we want to change the future comparatively, you know, and how it was in the past. So I do think that there's hope. How we do it has got to be around education. Those that now know have to help educate those that don't know yet. I cannot tell you, and for anyone listening, the amount of times when people like me who are traveling will put a call out to fellow wheelchair users or fellow disabled travelers and say, I'm going to this city, any recommendations? And we will flock to someone, to somewhere that someone has recommended, because it's so hard to find. I work with a brand who, they're not a disabled company, but they work with me, who are very keen to make sure I'm looked after. And the first time I needed to go and stay away, they wanted to look after booking the hotel for me. And I said, that's fine, you can do that, but this is what I need. And they said, oh, they've said that there's a car park nearby. And I said, that's great, but I need to know how far away is it, because I'm going to have a suitcase, and that means I'm going to have one arm to get myself with my wheelchair and my suitcase. And if the pavements are bad, it's going to be very hard, and it's going to reel off. And they said it's 2 minutes walk. 2 minutes walk for them, without all of those difficulties, is 10 minutes walk for me, and it will cause me pain. And they said, we had not thought of that. That's not good enough for you. We're going to find you somewhere else. And it wasn't until I pointed it out, and that's what we're looking for. What we're looking for is people to, once they know, to do different. And then they found me a hotel that had parking on site and a person who would come to my car. I just had to phone them, and they helped me with my bags to my room. And that made me feel like I was not incapacitated. What's the word? Enabled, just like anybody else. I didn't have any struggles. I could just get myself from my car to my room. There was no struggles. It was amazing. It was so nice.
And
I am on Instagram at _search for silver linings. I also have a new venture called Roll with Style UK, and that is where we are offering style and fashion advice and guidance for anyone with a disability, primarily in a wheelchair at the moment. So get in touch if you've got any style advice that you want. I'm also on TikToks, search for Silver Linings, and YouTube, just search Silver Linings, Roll with Style.
I don't really feel that I need to add much more to what Sandie has said there. We have got time to stick around if people want to discuss or reflect on what has been said. But I think just to summarize what we do next, stop questioning when people are sharing their lived experience, and let's not ask why anymore. Let's start asking what can we do? What can we do to make things better? What can we do to change? We need to talk more. Sandie and Isaac both made absolutely clear to us that perfection isn't expected. It's, nobody's going to get everything right all the time. We just need to listen and to be able to make the impacts that we can. So to listen to people from the disabled community, to amplify their voices and to shout for them. So that's everything that I kind of want to say. I'm going to open up to questions. We'll be sending out some resources and a link to the recording of this session. It'll be next week that we do that. And we'll have details of the next CPD to Inspire session for you. But from me and Krish for the formal bit, because I can stop the recording for questions. Thank you very much for coming this afternoon, or for listening in if you're catching up with us. Please do share this with anyone who you think might find it useful. So thank you all so much.